Hi everybody, I'm Rhiannon, owner of the Epsom Bakehouse. and hello, I'm coming today to talk to you about how to do a simple check to check that your sourdough starter is bubbly enough to bake with. Now, I'm doing this as in September, lots of bakers celebrate baking sourdough bread, which is a fantastic bread that you make with a starter of flour and water that needs to be bubbly enough to produce enough gas to rise your bread. If you're interested in getting more bread making tips, then have a look at the comments below this video for a link, and you can sign up for my newsletter to get more bread making tips, recipes, and everything about making great bread at home. So do check that out in the comments. So if you've never made sourdough bread before, then you might be thinking, what's it all about? And the basis of making a sourdough bread is that you start off with just flour and water, usually something like wheat or rye flour, and you build up a starter by mixing together a little bit more, adding in to the same mixture a little bit more flour and water every day, and that encourages the natural yeasts that are present on the flour to start to multiply. They get more fresh water and more fresh food from the flour every day. The yeast start to multiply in that mixture and it gets bubbly, they produce gas. And eventually you have a strong enough starter, a solution of flour and water that's producing enough gas that when you add it into a dough, it will very slowly rise that dough and produce sourdough bread. So I very much simplified it there, but it really is, that is the simple basis of baking sourdough bread. But if you've baked sourdough bread before, you might think, my goodness, I tried it, it didn't rise, it turned out really flat like a pancake, it turned out like a brick. I just don't understand what happened. I've baked with commercial yeast before. Maybe you're thinking, used commercial yeast before, I know what I'm doing with that, why didn't the sourdough turn out? And just wanted to talk today about a quick check that you can do. I've got some of my sourdough starter here. I use a rye sourdough starter. And I fed this last night, so that means I got some sourdough starter that was quite dormant. It was liquid, it's been not been fed in a while, so the yeast have gone back to sleep. They're not active, they're not producing gas, and they need some fresh flour and water in them to get them making bubbles again, bubbles of gas. And so I fed that overnight with some more flour and water, and it is now bubbling. But is it ready to use? Even though it's got lots of bubbles on the top, and also if you draw a spoon through it, it is a little bit like a chocolate mousse, or if you think about that, going pop, 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 all those little bubbles. But there's one quick test you can also do, and grab a glass of water and a teaspoon, and just put a little bit of your starter, fed starter, in the glass, and you might be able to see there, it's not the most attractive of tests, but it is floating on the top of the water. So the starter has filled out with so much gas that it will actually now float on water. So that is the test that you need to do to check that your starter is bubbly enough. Is it floating when you put a teaspoon of it onto a glass of water? Does it float at the top instead of sinking down? So if it is floating, then it is ready to use, and you can start baking some bread with it. So start making up your sourdough dough. So that was just coming on for a little quick test of how to check that your sourdough starter is ready to bake with. You want a starter that's active and bubbly and producing enough gas to rise your dough, and that is one way to check. So I hope that's been useful today. As mentioned, if you'd like more bread making tips, recipes from me, then you can sign up to my newsletter, which is in the link below this video. And if you've got any other sourdough bread making tips or any other bread making questions that you'd like answered, then do let me know in the comments. It would be great to hear from you. And you can put a link, your question in the comments and let me know, and I can answer that in another video in the future. I'll be coming on every week to answer your bread making questions, so do watch out for them, and do let me know if you've got any questions you'd like answered. Otherwise, I'll say bye for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon to chat more about baking great bread at home.